and welcome to our second She's Possible panel discussion in celebration of Women's History Month. I am Nagilia Ravin, founder and CEO of Womel, and I'll be your host for today. We are so excited to have you join us for another discussion focusing on the power of owning your story and embracing your journey. Discover our self-awareness can be the key to personal and professional success. So, before we dive in, a few quick housekeeping items. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session. You can ask questions through the chat, or you can post it in the Q&A section on Zoom. You can also raise your hands on Zoom using the Zoom function, and we'll call you on to ask your question live. Also, under resources, you can learn more about each panelist and connect with them on LinkedIn. We are also excited for today's panel as we are joined by 4 of our 2023 award winners. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Chaneé Danielle and Vicky Regan from our top 5 women coaches, along with Andora, our Thought Leader of the Year, and Dauwn, our Leadership Coach of the Year. Now, I'd like to give our panelists the chance to introduce themselves. Each panelist will have about 1 minute to share their background, a key takeaway they hope you gain from today's discussion. We'll go in alphabetical order. Andora, you could please kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Ponticello. I feel honored to be here today. I was reflecting for a few minutes before the call to see what clear, concise message I wanted to communicate. And instead of going on about my own background, since it's available in the resources, I wanted to take a moment to remind everyone that in our collective consciousness, this is the time for us to come together as light emissaries and knowledge sharers. And I think that's really what today is about. It's about the concept of the power of our stories. It's about resilience. It's about vulnerability. And in sharing our light, it's also blasting through those moments of darkness or questioning on our journey. So as a transformational leader, I've written a number of best-selling books on this subject matter, but really there's a calling for all of us to just follow our own truth and to remember we are able through community connections and in the work and through our heart center to shine light into the world right now. So I feel honored. I think today is a spear of light that's being radiated out. And I feel that there will be much grace that will pour from this.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andora Hinton. I am the CEO of Willow North Growth Partners. I'm so honored to be amongst these other women and sharing information with you all today. My background is in newspaper sales, but I got into leadership development and leadership training many, many years ago. And it is most certainly my love. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I would love for people to walk away with today is thinking about this title of She's Possible. There's so many possibilities that we have inside of us that a lot of times we don't even know that's there. And so what my hope is today for all of you, and for me too, because I'm excited to hear the other panelists as well, is that we will walk away with something to know what is really possible.
I think I'm next as a C. So my name is Dr. Chaneé Danielle, and I am the founder and CEO of the Cornerstone Concept, which is an executive life and leadership coaching consultancy, and also the co-founder and principal of Foresight Strategy Solutions, which is an organizational effectiveness consultancy that's really rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm just really excited to be here. Just to be in the presence of other women, to talk to each one of you all who are here, really about the importance of knowing that out of the 8 billion people in the world, none of us were created just the same, and each of us has a unique purpose. And that if there's anything that you take away from today and our conversations and what we'll all be sharing, is that you have a purpose. And when you know what that purpose is, anything is possible for you. And so I'm just super excited and honored to be amongst so many beautiful women, both inside and out, to just share with one another and inspire one another and learn from one another. So thank you for having us today.
I'll jump on here. My name is Dauwn Parker. I am founder and CEO of Precision Partners. My background is information technology, and I really funneled my background, my experience, and skills into developing a consulting firm that really services the higher education and the healthcare sectors, specifically around fundraising operations. So really using our, skill set, our experience to really catapult organizations who are making groundbreaking discoveries and treatments within the healthcare space, as well as the importance of our universities to be able to provide education, skills, and opportunities for all of our youth. So at the end of the day, our consulting firm is really providing, that operational stability, excellence, and repeated growth year over year for organizations who are making a difference out there in the world. So really bringing, spreading good around the world as much as possible is where really I see the impact for myself as well as the company that I'm building. And the message that I would really like to give today in our discussions, once again, honor to be among such a power circle of women, is about that representation, right? The importance of women in all spaces, in all corners, in all industries, and that visibility and representation really allowing the aha moment for those leaders to come, the inspiration for those leaders who are currently maybe a little weary in their current walk to re-up and reinvigorate themselves to move forward. So I am excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
I'll jump in as the V at the end, the tail wrap us up here. I'm Vicky Regan, and I, will echo everything these ladies have said so far. And I'm so excited to be here just within this amazing panel of women. I'm the founder of Hone Leadership, which is executive and leadership coaching for professional women. Prior to becoming an executive coach, I spent over 25 years in leadership and executive roles in technology and business. So that's the reason that I really wanted to help women sort of further their careers and kind of overcome challenges in their careers, because I really understand what it's like out there. We have unique challenges, I think, as women. So, I think that the message that I would love to sort of impart and hope people take away from the conversation today is around this notion of resiliency, and how if we can really double down on that and use that as our superpower and look at potential challenges or obstacles as opportunities and use those to our advantage. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Vicky. Many of us avoid embracing our struggles alongside our success. Can you share a turning point where you realized owning the messy part of your story was actually a source of strength? Andora, would you go first?
Oh gosh, the messy part of my story. I have a very messy story. If we have time. So I like to start this story off by saying I had three major things that happened in a time that could happen to probably many women who are listening today. In 2014, I got married. In 2015, my job was eliminated from a company that I had been with for about 2 years. In 2016, my husband asked me for a divorce. And in 2017, I moved to North Carolina. So there were a lot of major, and I started my business in 2015. So everything was messy. There was a lot of things that were happening. But I think what I gained from that, as someone was mentioning, I think it was Laura who talked about resilience. One of the biggest things that I learned during that experience was first faith. My faith certainly became a lot stronger during that period. But also it made me think about how it re-energized my life. So I'm 47, I'll be 48 in a couple weeks. And one of the things that I started to realize was that I was kind of living this different kind of life that had energy, but not the energy that I knew was inside of me. And during this mess, there were so many things that came out that I did not even know was there. It was dormant until all this stuff started happening. And it made me reintroduce myself to a person that I didn't know was there, but that I was really excited about. And it also helped to propel me into different opportunities. It opened many different doors. And it really moved me outside of, I think, of a comfort zone that I was in when I was in the corporate space that I didn't even know was possible. So there was a lot of messiness, but what came out of that was so much goodness. I'm now remarried. I have a 6-year-old stepdaughter who is amazing. I have an amazing dog. We just moved to a new house a couple of years ago. So it's like my life just did a total 360 because I embraced the mess. I embraced the mess, and it helps me to see that just because there's a lot of things going on doesn't mean that life can't be better or different. And it's both. And so that was one of the things that happened for me.
All righty, I will keep us going. So I think my messy moment was probably my 31st birthday. And I just celebrated my 38th birthday a couple of weeks ago. And on my 31st birthday, let me go back to year 30 first. So when I was 30, I kind of had this mantra that I lived by. It was doctor by 30. I was finishing up my PhD. I was getting married. I just moved to California. I'd started what I considered to be my dream job at the time. And so I had everything going. But then once I finished that doctor by 30, which was actually maybe a month or so later, but I didn't beat myself up too bad about that. I said, like, once I finished, I was like, oh, well, what else am I doing? Like, I've achieved all my goals. I've checked the boxes. What else am I doing? And so then by the time my 31st birthday came around, everybody was so excited that I just done all, like I had a major big 30 year. But on my 31st birthday, I was sitting on my couch with the curtains drawn, and I just wanted people to stop calling me. Like, I was ready for my birthday to be over because while everybody was celebrating me, I was empty and dark on the inside. And in that moment, that was when I realized, like, oh, something has to change. What am I living for? If I've checked all of these boxes, if I've accomplished all of these things, the PhD, the marriage, the job, the life in California, and I'm still not happy, that means that there's something inside of me that I've not tapped into. And that was when I realized that I needed to figure out who I was at the core. What was my purpose? What was my purpose beyond work? Because all of my focus was work at that point. As Rihanna says, work, right? But outside of work, what was my purpose? And if anybody had ever asked me, oh, what's your purpose? I would have instantly started talking about things that I did in my professional life. But I realized that at the core, I didn't know who I was outside of that. And that was when I had to do the work to figure out, who am I as a human? Who is Chaneé at the core? What is my purpose? What am I on this earth for? What am I on this earth to do? What brings me joy? What fills me up? What impact do I want to make? And I just had to do that work. And it was not easy. It was hard. That pruning of, these outside accolades, these outside titles, and the kind of the pedestal I put them on. So I had to do some of that hard work, which was, to use the word messy, but to really just figure out who I was and go on a journey of self-discovery, of faith, of diving, deeper into my faith, of, looking in the mirror and seeing some ugly truths about who I was and how I was showing up in the world, and take off that mask and be like, no, this is who I am at the core. This is when I'm being most purposeful, when I'm being most authentic. This is who I am. And when that happened, that was when, everything else started to just open up. I became more pleasant. My marriage got better because I was happier. I started taking better care of my physical health. And then professionally, I started to blossom because I knew who I was and that my end goal wasn't the work, but it was making sure that I was holistically well as I was doing that work, and that work was purposeful and impactful, not only for the people that I was trying to serve, but for me and my heart and who I was.
Dauwn, would you like to go next?
Sure. I had to think a lot about divulging this information, and I really looked at the theme of vulnerability in this panel discussion. And so I thought long and hard about it, and I thought sharing this story could really help some others as they kind of go on their journey as an entrepreneur. And so I started my business in 2013. And by 2016, that's when my messiness started. So started in 2013, actually brought my husband on board into the business in 2014. He had some great skills from a sales and operations perspective, and the business was going, much better than I could have anticipated in the early stages. By 2016, we had gotten on a roll of really not only growing the business, but what it meant for our relationship. We took it on as us against the world. Like, we're the power couple building this consulting firm. And in that power couple element, there was some, naivety. There was some mistakes about business and our infrastructure, particularly that we kept maintaining doing our own taxes for the business. So in 2016, with a small business that's growing and everything is wonderful, I faced an IRS audit. And that is the, quintessential fear, to sit there for hours on end and essentially answer questions, very, personal questions, probing questions, to be, treated as someone who was trying to, fool the system or trick the system, when honestly, we knew in our hearts that it was literally a mistake. Like, we literally answered 2 questions wrong on, TurboTax, once again, by ourselves. And that sent us, down a rabbit hole, the wrong direction, for our taxes. So in this, situation, I'm a perfectionist. So I immediately went into, oh my gosh, I've, ruined my business. I've done something wrong. I wasn't on top of it. And then it also created conflict between both my husband and I, because when you take on a business and you put your marriage, in the middle of it as well, all, financial issues and financial challenges can really rock the foundation of a marriage. And so we really had, kind of a core decision to make in this situation. We can really, bicker with each other, break up the marriage based on a conflict within the business, or we can really be the power couple that we were trying to be and give each other grace for the missteps that were made. And in all honesty, we did what we thought was best at different points and face this challenge together head on and become stronger from it and learn from it. And so from that, it's really a, entrepreneurial lesson for others, in that as you're building your business, really shore up your infrastructure, know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and be okay, spending some of the money in order to shore up that infrastructure. It will sure save you in the long run. Now, I count myself as, this is a lesson I was able to walk away from with my marriage intact. It's wonderful. My husband and I are doing very, very well. And my business, I was able to get it back on track. I did not lose my business. Thank goodness we were able to work through it. But if I can provide that lessons learned to any entrepreneur out there that would be helpful from you learning from my mistakes.
There's such great power in all of the stories that are being shared, and each individual that's listening or watching, the power of your own story. For me, I had a lot of success when I was younger. My background was in human resources and in executive coaching. And when I was 34 years old, I had to really advocate for myself in the high-tech telecom area to get an advancement, which at that time was to a vice president level role. And I went over to London, England, and it was my first opportunity being away from my family. I grew up very family-centric in an Italian Catholic culture where you tend to have food, faith, and family, FF&F all the time. So basically, I found myself, instead of using it as an opportunity for self-exploration, I worked myself. I guess I kind of had a drive-through relationship with myself. There was a lot of pressure, I think, that I put on myself, especially as a woman leader in a male-dominated environment, to prove myself. So somehow that psyche within me said, you must work hard to get ahead. And that was a belief that was also affirmed at a very young age in my family structure. I ended up at a very young age having, and this is probably an uncomfortable subject for men who might be listening, but I had a lot of menstrual issues and I had never been diagnosed with endometriosis. So the compression of working so hard, even though I said, quote, it was for my family, I ended up coming back from that assignment and really being quite exhausted. I finally was diagnosed with endometriosis, and it really was a wake-up call for me to take a look at mindfulness practices. And when you sit with yourself after running so hard for so long, boy, is it a wake-up call on that inner dialogue, even though I really was the type of young professional who I didn't have fear. Like, I took every assignment offered to me. I didn't know enough, I think, at a younger age to be fearful, but somehow that psychological mindset of what I call the pendulum, I was out of whack. I was in a space where my body was saying, slow down, tune within, get more balanced. And that propelled me on a journey to start sitting with myself. So I started taking long walks. I found a spiritual center that had this beautiful labyrinth. And I literally would walk at sunrise and sunset, and the whispers of my heart started talking to me. I then said, okay, I've got to make a change in my corporate mindset. I started my own consulting company, and again, that work addiction personality showed up full court press. So I was surprised, even though I had taken mindfulness, I started, meditating and doing yoga, but that work part of myself, that high achiever, kept showing up to the plate. And then a very fascinating thing happened. There was a local coffee shop where I was living, and I kept intersecting with these really interesting women who had overcome something in their life. So I started journaling some of their stories, because I felt these were kind of, I suppose, God winks or intersections that kept coming to me for an unusual reason. I still was working my consulting company, doing executive coaching, but something in my heart was starting to blossom by these stories of resilience that were being told to me. So my first book was a collection of some of these stories, but I ended up interviewing 1,000 women on what inspired them in their daily life, because I thought maybe that would be like an intuitive nudge for me to say, I need to change how I'm approaching my life and be completely centered and balanced. and open up more my intuitive voice. So I started doing inspirational gatherings for women in particular, and that eventually led me to start my own publishing company, which really was about stories of rebirth and transformation. I still was doing coaching, but the part of the messiness that I had to flip on the other side is that you can't run on an empty tank. How was I going to hydrate my well going forward and every day have that mindset? So for me, I developed like a toolkit, I suppose, that led me to write other books and grow in my own understanding. And now I suppose if I sat down with my journal, I would say, what advice would I want to give to my younger self? And I think as leaders in the transformational space and as empowered women, we all wear a different pair of shoes. But for me, I would tell my younger self, be gentler with yourself. Love yourself so deeply that you don't have to prove anything to anyone in the world, and just be true to who you are and know that you're still evolving.
Vicky, I think you're on it.
I think so. So, when I think about messy, kind of a point for me was if we think back to COVID, when things were at the height of stress, we're so far past that. It's kind of hard to put back into that moment where, do you remember when things were very, very tense and stressful for just people in general on the planet? Of we can't see family members, people rushing to buy toilet paper, just all that whole time was very, very tense. In the workplace, it was very tense. So there were layoffs, how were we going to work together? It was just a kind of a crazy time. On my broader team, it was a very, very tense time because it just so happened that my whole team, my extended team, had a number of family crises, some terminal illnesses on the families. There were multiple deaths in people's families. So there's a lot of heaviness in addition to all, a global pandemic, potential layoffs, all of these things going on simultaneously. So it's heavy. At one moment, I had one of my team members say, "Hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'd like to talk to you about what's going on with me." And so I thought, hey, this is just a conversation about his performance or their performance. And they said to me, "Hey, just want to share with you that here's what's going on in my life. I think it's impacting my performance, but 6 weeks ago, my father took his own life, and in a very violent way. I won't share, but very, very violent way." And they shared with me that this was, in fact, the first time they'd even spoken about it, had not shared it with anybody in their life, including their own partner. And they'd been carrying this around for 6 weeks, day in, day out, in addition to everything that was going on. So in the course of that conversation, this person had very, very understandably had an emotional, just complete breakdown. And it was a really significant moment. And so, fortunately, we had the resources there at the company to provide support, help. We got this person, extended time to handle what was going on. It was heavy. I was, glad that I was able to be that person for this individual. It was a lot to carry. I did process all of that and came in the next day going, okay, ready to continue on with this. And my company is a very, publicly, hey, we're here for our people, we're people first, that type of public image. But behind closed doors, it was another story, I think, because in a meeting, a very, very senior leader was asking me, what's going on with ex-employee with the workload? And I said, oh, you may not have heard, but here's the situation. And what I was told was, I've heard, I don't care. Call him immediately and ask him about workload. And it was that moment, just because it had been such a massive person, a personal story, a human being's life that was impacted, that for me, that reaction, I guess it was my own being naive to think that everybody thinks and feels like I do as an empath, that we should put people first and not our numbers and not our, I do understand that we run businesses, of course. But at that point, I just realized this does not align with me. And I, had been considering for a very long time that I need to, something's off here with my career, even though I had done it for over 20 years. It's not quite it. But I'd always looked at it from up until that moment, I looked at it from a functional part. What things do I do in my job? And are those the right fit? I never, until that moment, had thought about it from any other lens, right? Like, what are my values? I never thought about it that way. What are my values? Is this in alignment with the work that I do? I just looked at it from, here's what I'm great at doing. This is what I, can succeed in, and just stayed on that path. And what I really started, when I really dug in, I'm like, it was a light bulb that went on, and it sort of changed. So that for me was a huge inflection point, even though I wasn't able to act on it immediately. I didn't realize it was the pivotal moment that it was until a little bit later. But that, if I have to say, was I think that was the moment. But yeah, it was for sure a huge moment, and very, very messy.
That was messy, because just listening to you talking, my skin's starting to kind of like have those bumps popping up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, but it's
yeah.
Wow. That's why they call them big corporations. So let's talk about overcoming the pressure to be perfect. As women, I guess the world looked at us, we're supposed to be perfect. And sometimes we go up learning that we need to be perfect. But in reality, can we really be perfect? Do we need to be perfect? So when was the time embracing an imperfection or taking a risk that led you to unexpected growth or opportunity? You decided that, okay, I am imperfect. I'm going to embrace that. And that led to something else, something bigger than you thought.
So I am a recovering perfectionist and also a recovering people pleaser. This is, I think after I shared my story about the layoff and the divorce and all of those things, I realized that I was not perfect. There was no way that I was perfect, and that I had a lot of growing to do. And I think one of the biggest pivotal moments when I realized that I really needed to kind of pivot in my business, and was a little bit of a risk, but led to great opportunity. So I started my business in 2015, and it was a different name. It was Repeated Excellence, and the IT was capitalized, which was a huge mistake because a lot of people thought I was an IT business. Some people said Repeat IT. Some people called it Repeated, and I was like, this is all wrong. So there was so much wrong with it. So in 2020, so 5 years later, I decided to change the name. And Dr. Danielle mentioned this about like finding out who you are. I think when I started the business, it was really, I had been laid off and I really was trying to figure out how am I going to make money? And my background's in sales. It's like, I know how to sell. I don't know how to run a business. And so there were so many things, yes, that I was learning along the way. And I was like, I was just focused on making money. I wasn't really focused on the strategy and how to really run a business. And so 2020, I was like, okay, we got to stop the madness because it's driving me crazy that people can't even say the business name and they don't know the business, they know me. And I didn't want that because I wanted to grow. I didn't want it to just be about me. So I decided to change the name, which was one of the hardest things. I don't know how easy it was for my fellow panelists to come up with a name for your business, but that is like the hardest thing to do. And so I decided to change the name. And the first person that I reached out to help me, she was going to design the logo and help me with the name. And I paid money for her to do that. And we could not get there. We just couldn't. She couldn't get there. I couldn't explain to her what I was looking for. And so we both walked away very amicably. And I said, I just got to take a break from it. And I took a little bit of a break for a few months. And I came back to it and I asked a different person. And he said to me, best advice that I have gotten in this business. He said, stop trying to think about your business as what you do, but think about your business as who you are. And that was probably the best advice that I could have ever been given. And that is how Willow North Growth Partners came about. And so we changed the name in 2021. We changed the logo. We changed all the branding. We changed the website. We developed new programs. And it really started, and I myself, as a business owner, as a woman, as an individual, I started to realize who I was as a business owner, because I think that's very important when you are moving from working at a corporation to now owning a business. You're trying to figure out who you are and you're growing and going along the way. And so it's very slowly, I started to realize who I was and who I wanted to be as a business owner and what I wanted the business to look like. So it was definitely a little bit of a risk because we had that name for a little while, but I was like, this is the perfect time to do it because people still don't know who we are as a company. They just know who Andora is. And so we did that, and we have a great following on LinkedIn. People will say Willow North rather than saying Andora. We have a team of people who now I can send. It doesn't always have to be me. And so it was the best. It was a little scary. There was a lot going on, but it was one of the best decisions that I could have made, is changing the name of that business.
Oh my goodness, these stories are just so inspiring. Thank you all for sharing. Can you just give me the question one more time so I can make sure I've gotten so lost in people's responses. I lost the question, so I want to make sure I'm staying on target.
When was the time embracing an imperfection or taking a risk led to unexpected growth or opportunity?
Great, thank you. So I'll lean towards kind of taking the risk. So you remember I was telling you all about that dream job I had when I was 30-ish. And like I shared, I was in a very dark place. And that dark place wasn't just on my birthday. It showed up every single day. I had what some people call the Sunday blues or the Monday blues. Every Sunday before work, I would cry. Like I would just literally cry because I knew that the work that I wanted to do, it was in my heart, but that's not the work that I was able to do every single day. And so every now and then, every couple of weeks, I would write my resignation letter. And let me just be very upfront here. When I was writing that resignation letter, my husband had just also gotten laid off from his job. We actually worked for the same organization, both in education. And I was crying every day, and we finally was like, we can't I couldn't keep going back, and our family, what we were trying to build, couldn't deal with the despair that I was going through. And so I quit that job, and I didn't have anything lined up. And let me just say, I do encourage people to leave situations that don't feel purposeful and on alignment. But I also know that not everybody can just up and walk away from a job. And so I want to just name that up front and name that I feel blessed to be able to have done that at the time. But I had to leave that job. And when I shared with people that I was leaving, they're like, oh, well, where are you going? Like, I don't know. I'm just going on a faith walk, because I knew that I could no longer do that. But when I tell you that faith walk, that 9 months of my husband and I sitting across from our dining room table unemployed is what changed our lives. Because at that moment, you had to depend on trusting yourself, trusting each other. For us, we had to trust God. We also had to figure out, again, back to who are we? What do we want to do? What is the work that we want to do that feels in alignment with who we are? And not just like I think, Vicky, you were talking about, like, what are the things that I do at work that are in alignment, but not just the things that I do, but how are the things that I am doing in my job, the work, the people that I'm engaged with, the organizations I'm engaged with, how are they in alignment with my values? And so that risk of leaving that job helped me realize a couple of things. One, trust yourself, and trust that when something in your spirit is telling you this place is not healthy for you, this place is not in alignment with where you're trying to go, this place is not in alignment with the values that even they say they might have, and you're feeling that trepidation, trust that. Also trust that if there's anything that you desire or that you want, or there's a certain result that you want, with faith, with determination, and with work, you can do it. My husband and I, we met in graduate school. And so we kind of started the second business that I talked about, Foresight Strategy Solutions, is what we have together. But that was kind of what we came up with in graduate school. And we got to bring that to life during our unemployment time. And we took some, we took some time doing that. But then what the work that's really near and dear to my heart is the work that I do, the executive life and leadership coaching that I do through the Cornerstone concept, where I get to help people really learn how, like, you might be an expert in your field, but you're clueless about who you are. And a lot of my clients recognize that. They're like, oh yeah, this is my purpose. This is what I do. Check, check, check. But I ask, who are you at the core? They're like, ooh, that's a hard question. And when the hardest question is, who am I at the core, you realize that you have to really kind of figure that out. And had I not done that work for myself, had I not done that messy kind of transformational work of figuring out who I was, then I wouldn't be at the point of supporting others and doing that. And now that I look back on it, I've been doing that work throughout my entire career trajectory of hearing people share their stories, hearing people share their challenges and helping them overcome them. But what I realized was the biggest challenge that not only I was facing, but others were facing, was this feeling of not being grounded in a purpose, that's not being grounded in your own life cornerstone and building your life on that. That when you continue to move forward, kind of not knowing where you are and not with that foundation, then you get lost. That's when that depression comes in. That's when that darkness comes in. And so kind of, circling it back, taking that faith walk, taking that, like, oh my goodness, I'm getting ready to leave this job with nothing else lined up. That has been the most transformational point in my life, because that is when it clicked that I have to do everything with purpose or my entire life will crumble.
I think I'll go ahead and jump in here. Thank you so much. That was amazing, just testament to that leap of faith. And I want to piggyback on that a little bit. So I'll kind of share a story of, really taking that leap of faith. And for anyone who knows me, I am probably one of the most analytical people you will run across. I actually have a degree in math. So if I can apply some sort of mathematical equation to something, I will. And so in this situation, it was really at the point in deciding to further grow my business. And how I approached the growth was, once again, if, I overlaid all of these different, mathematical formulas, all of these, different models, I would come up with on, March 31st, 30th of this year, you will be able to grow your company by this much. And anybody who's been in business for a while knows that is not how it works at all. There is no moment where you're going to be 100% guaranteed, comfortable that if I expand or if I stretch my business or if I stretch myself by X amount, it was the exact right time to do it. So keeping on that theme of taking that leap of faith, about, I would say, 3 years ago, now I decided, once again, I approached it from an analytical perspective, in expanding past, my husband and I as the principal consultants of the business, with the exception of, some small contract things where we, leverage certain individuals in the background. But as far as customer facing, we were it. That was it. It was just us. And the business had plateaued from that perspective. And I really had a vision to go beyond that, right? So all of our work is, operational excellence so that these organizations can fulfill on their missions to do further good in the world, which why wouldn't you want to expand on that? And so I took a leap of faith in the calculations made no sense whatsoever to bring on additional consultants, to take on salaries. There was potential there, but not concrete, definitive, revenue that could cover at the time that salary for an extended period of time, right? And so what I found I was able to do is to be upfront and honest with that person. Listen, here's where we are. Here's our vision. This is what we like to do. Here is the potential of that. Do I have it in hand? Absolutely not. But I have to be honest with you about this. Essentially, do you want to take this ride with me? And I found without fail, the individuals that I was looking to come on board in the company that were a great fit for our company culture would inject a certain energy into the company, and also coming, with the correct skill set. They were willing to take that leap. It's like, I do not like what I'm doing now. They were mostly in more, traditional corporate jobs. I am fine taking that leap of faith with you. And what was the surprising thing is, after coming on board, what I did not anticipate, what you cannot calculate in any way, shape, or form, analytically, mathematically, is the energy that you put out in the universe once you take that leap. And the energy is then multiplied by these individuals that are now on this ride with you. And so as they came, the contracts started to come, the work started to come. And so that was my biggest surprise in that leap of faith. And, now we just ride it out. And I am happy to say majority of the people that I brought on board are some powerhouse women, and I love it.
I was thinking about your statement, which was so powerful, about energy being magnified. Because if the essence of who we are is, whether you come, whatever your belief system is, it's from God, source, energy, or however you define who you are as an individual, this concept that we're walking energy. So imagine our impact on both spectrums, the positive side and the negative, not only in our own trajectory, but in the world around us. And I was thinking, in my own case, the concept of the imperfect self. You know, what is perfection? What is imperfection? But for me to be the best version of myself, to lead other people in the transformational space, in whatever way that was my life on purpose, I had to really pull back the onion within myself and get to the core, to sit with that imperfect self, to find the epitome of love. So if you think about, you know, in business environments, we're not always talking about the concept of love. We're talking about self-empowerment. We're talking about achieving success. Now we're talking about, obviously, some of the toolkit that should have been there all along: empathy, compassion, inclusion, and diversity. But in that collective consciousness, when we come together as leaders or as managers or as entrepreneurs and touching other people, we can see, if we believe our worthiness and we see that spark of love within ourselves, we know that we don't have to one up the person next to us. We don't have to tear someone down. We can rise together and grow together and be the best versions of ourselves. And so for me, this imperfect self, I had to go on a journey of self-discovery, which eventually became a book called The Art of Self-Transformation. And for 18 months, I wrote an essay to myself on different life topics, like what is self-worth, what is compassion, what is empathy. And boy, it's like turning on a water spigot. When you pour that out, you really realize all the monkey mind stuff that's been living in your mind. And from the outside, you know, I'm a very confident person. And it's not that, first, it's okay to have insecurities and vulnerabilities, but in getting to know who I was through this art of self-transformation, I would write this letter to myself on Sundays after praying and meditating, because I had a non-judgment voice. I didn't censor what I was writing. And when I finally got to the last essay, what is self-love, I could see the journey of the woman who even had started that. She was much more empowered now, but she didn't have anything to prove to anyone. She could then step through a new doorway in her brilliance, in her beauty, and let her light shine, because source energy, God, the universe, was now directing the bus of my life. And that imperfect self got to love all the cracks of her frailty. And she started weaving a new tapestry that she could bring out into the world for other leaders and entrepreneurs. And, you know, I just think, as I'm listening to everyone's collective stories here, we're weaving new tapestries every day. And there's so many lessons that we are continually learning as evolving wise women, independent of our age. So thank you for listening to me share that.
Well, I don't really have a perfectionist thread. Sometimes I'm more of a recovering pleaser. So, Andora, I see you. Definitely. I mean, I work on it all the time and will continue to. It never really leaves. But I think I had maybe an unhealthy relationship with resiliency. And by that, I mean that it was a kind of a badge of honor that I've always worn, like, hey, I can always land on my feet. I know I'm always going to. I'm very resilient. You know, I'm going to get through anything. And then you couple that with, you know, I'm a naturally optimistic, sunny type of person. So I always thought that I was super positive, right? That's a great thing. I'm always going to make it and it's always going to look great. But actually, what I realized is actually, I was shooting myself in the foot. It was kind of sabotaging, actually, because I wound up staying in situations. It kept me in a groove, right? Because just because you can get through something doesn't mean you should, And so I sort of would feel like, although not consciously for a long time, I just always was propelled by thinking, I can do this. I can do it. I can do it, even though I shouldn't have been doing that for as long as I was. I was burnt out. It was horrible. It was a lot of stress. It wasn't my calling. And so when I finally really opened my eyes wide and I could see things for what it was, I reframed that from, it's not that I can't do it. It's that I don't want to do it. And so once I reframe that, I flip that script, and that honestly, that flows to every area of my life. And oh my gosh, I don't know if it's an age thing that I just to get to the point where like, it's so much easier to say no now. Like, and I don't care, no, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. And it's same thing with work and everything else. It's like, no, and it's such a great feeling to be able to do that I can do that. Yes, I could stay in that crappy job, or yes, I could still be affiliated with these people I don't like, but I don't want to. And so I'm consciously making that decision, and that kind of helps with that pleasing part of me that I'm working on. So
thank you, Vicky. I hope that you don't put me in that folder of I'm going to continue to work with these people just
absolutely not. Absolutely not. You are a pure gem.
Well, thank you so much. You all have beautiful stories, but also touchy. Like I know some of you, when you are talking, my skin's starting to kind of like the bumps starting to come up, and then I have to hold my tears. Sometimes I feel like I want to cry. But is anyone have any questions for any of the panelists? I'll be more than happy to give you mic and you can talk. Okay, someone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So first thing I want to say is just thank you to all the panelists. The things that you all shared today was amazing. And, I feel like as women, we are the nurturers, and many times we tend to not nurture ourselves as much. And so what I heard throughout your stories was so much of how you began to nurture yourself. And I feel like that was all of those were pivotal moments for you. And I'm curious, do you or have you found ways, even with your busy business life, to continue that self-care, the self-nurturing, because it seemed to be a way for you to, be able to balance your business and to also get on the right track, so to speak?
Who would like to take that one?
I'll take that one. Especially since, as I mentioned, I work with my husband as well. So it's not only, self-care, but it's also care for our relationship aside for our business. So a couple of different ways, number one, truly taking time off, for myself weekly. For me, I'm an avid tennis player. I absolutely love to play tennis. It was, years ago when I started this tradition to take off midweek in the morning to go play tennis, just seemed like an affront to my business. And as a CEO founder, how could I do that? But that was the whole reason I created the business, for myself. So carving out some personal time to do something that I love in a community of women tennis players that I absolutely love is what I get to do on a weekly basis for myself. As far as my relationship, every Sunday, my husband and I check in about what has happened personally that we need to, talk about in our relationship. things we need to go over, resolve, clear the air, et cetera, and what we need from a business perspective and doing the same. So some tips for that.
That's
Dr.
wonderful.
Chaneé, Dr. Chaneé, you have your hands up. Do you have something to add to that?
Yes, I'll definitely add to that. So one of the things that I like to encourage people to, and then also myself, because we're mirrors to each other, is that when you think about self-care, it can be those big things of traveling, of saying no. It could be, leaving a situation, a job, a relationship, or an experience that doesn't feel great. Or it can even be those small things. Like one thing about me, I have 2 businesses. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I have a toddler who bosses me around every single day. But there are a few things find the things that you notice that when you do, you're just a nicer person to not only others, but to yourself. So for me, I have a hot cup of tea every morning, and I don't look at it as like, oh, I'm addicted to tea. Cause some people they can't live without it. It's like, that's part of my own personal, warm experience. I take a hot shower multiple times a day. That's where I think. That's where I, that's where a lot of ideas come and percolate. And I lock the door. My kid is not allowed. That's my time. Have time that is completely yours. And the same way you schedule work meetings or family events and priorities, schedule those things too. I love what Dauwn said about middle of the week, right? Even if it feels uncomfortable to take that time for yourself, that's how you know you have to do it, because we're so comfortable doing things for other people and for work and things like that. We have to be just as comfortable as dedicating that time to ourselves. Just last night, I went to a dance class just because it was something that I wanted to do. So find those things that bring you joy and do more of it.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Thank you, ladies.
You are welcome, Didi. And I know we have Dr. Clark. You have your hands up. I'm going to allow you to talk, okay?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And actually, it's an extension of the self-care question that was starting to get answered. My question was, when you close your eyes, anybody can take this question, but research has shown, studies have shown that happy people not only perform better, but they also live longer. And just wondering, when you close your eyes and just think about your happy place, your happy person, your happy activities, what are some of those things that really lights up your light? When you, I guess, in the quiet still or the hustle and the bustle, whatever that may be, I really want you all to share with us, what are some of those things that really light up your life and bring you joy?
I'll start with that one. Gosh, there's so much that brings me great joy, but I'll start with my family. My stepdaughter, who's 6, just seeing life in the world through her eyes, learning so many new things, that brings me so much joy. We got a puppy back in August, and I can't even believe how much a dog can bring you so much joy, but he does. And just like Dauwn was talking about, she and her husband do Sunday check-ins. My husband and I, several years ago, started doing in weekends, where we go to the grocery store on Thursday or Friday morning, and we get food for the weekend, and we don't leave the house. We close our blinds, we keep them closed, and we connect, we eat, we laugh, we watch movies. We go away a little bit and do a little bit of our own thing, but I travel quite a bit with my work. And so it's a great way for us to stay connected on a monthly basis. And that gives me so much joy, and it always gives us something to look forward to. But I'll tell you what really brings me joy, great joy, is watching food shows and baking shows. I do not bake. I love to cook. But it's the only thing. I think a lot of us can say this way: when you are an entrepreneur, your personal life weaves in with your work life. It's just one thing, because it's who you are. And so it's really hard to just step away from it and not think about work. And food seems to be the only thing that kind of takes me away from work. And so those are some of the things that bring me great joy. And just taking a walk, the sunshine, taking a walk, going for a walk outside. I love what Dr. Danielle said about a cup of tea. I mean, it's some of the smallest things, reading a book, just getting in the corner and just reading a book and finishing it, going for a walk and listening to a book. I mean, it's just the littlest things that you'll find just bring you the greatest joy.
You know what I was thinking as I'm listening to a consistent stream based on this question is that concept of joy. It's in the midst of the world around us we're talking about giving ourselves permission to feel joyful. Because if you think about it as energy beings, the more we radiate joy, the more we're bringing it into our families, our communities, our churches, our customer base. And in my case, I try to consistently at 3:00 in the afternoon, I set a timer on my phone. I do the sacred pause. It's an opportunity to recalibrate my energy. So I literally see myself like clearing off any stress. I kind of do a feathering. I let it go. I ask Mother Earth, even if I'm in my office, to transmute that into the new light of the dawn. And then I hydrate. I intentionally drink water so that I have clarity, decision making. Because if you think about what we're ingesting in our body, the concept of water, and also that sacred pause, you can introduce a cup of tea with that. So the key really is slowing down, recalibrating, interconnecting with yourself, but you can use a cup of tea as you're inhaling it, you're breathing it, you're opening up the senses. But I also set an intention with that because I believe in intention setting all throughout the day to recalibrate the energy. So for example, I'm drinking a cup of joy today. I'm letting stress go. I'm opening up to the universal light to allow me to walk with joy, become joy. I am joyful.
I love that. Anyone else like to add into that? Dr. Clark, does that answer your question?
It most certainly does. Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I know we 10 minutes behind, and thank you for all the one that stay with us and continue to be here with us. It's powerful when women come together. It's powerful, When we come together, we just share the things that we went through in our lives, and you can relate to it, and you can take that, said, hey, she did that. She turned it around. She made something out of it. Like Dr. Chaneé, she could have just sit at home. Oh, I quit my job and let me go find another job. But she took a different path and created something with her husband that is powerful, that now kids can watch them doing that. When you're looking at Dauwn, what she is doing, it's like an inspiration. The mistakes that we made, right? Other women don't have to make those mistakes again because we can share them. We can let them know, no, don't go that path because it didn't work too well for me. It might not work for you either. So that's the power of us coming together and share our story and then uplift each other. It's okay to do that. And that's what we at Women we like to continue to do, to be able to bring women together, to share knowledge, to share stories, and to just support. And sometimes we just need to give you a shoulder. If you need to cry, you can cry. We are here for you. I thank everyone for being here, our panelists for being with us, for taking the time to give us over an hour to share your stories, your knowledge with everyone, and our attendees for staying full, even that we went over the limit. We appreciate you. We love you. And we thank you so much for all that you do and continue to support women. So when you go out there, you see another woman, just ask, how can I help you today? And you trust me, they probably will tell you, can I tell you a story that what's just happened to me? I heard that a lot. So just ask, give a hand, support another woman, and we love you all.
And you did an amazing job today holding
so
space for all of us. We have to take a moment to honor you for the light that you brought forth today. Thank you for what you've created and empowered and showcased. And our time just flew. I wish we had more time together. We could have our own cups of joy. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and bye for now.
Bye-bye. See you next time.